Hello YouTube. Now, getting straight down to business because I'm on a bit of a limited time frame at the moment. In my last video, my review of Skylinks, I provided some links to some of the newer Transformers collectors whose work I really like at the moment. If you pop over to the sidebar now, what you will find are links to some of the more established Transformers collectors, the ones who have been on YouTube for quite a while, whose work I really like and who have been very, very encouraging indeed. So pop over and visit some of the links. You'll both be edified and incredibly entertained, I think. Now, the toy I'm going to be reviewing today is a pretty special one for me, really. When it's a Beast Wars toy, and when the Beast Wars line first came out, I wasn't terribly enthused by them. The first wave of the Beast Wars toys I thought were pretty dreadful. I didn't like the aesthetic of them very much. I thought it was completely out of keeping with what had gone before. I think I was still hung up on the old Generation 1 look, to be honest, and I wasn't really ready for anything terribly new. To be fair, I still really dislike some of the earlier Beast Wars toys. I think that they look dreadful. The robot modes are so incoherent and they have bits hanging all off of them. And it wasn't really until much later on, after I started really getting into the cartoon and some of the latter day Beast Wars toys came out, that I started to collect them. And the one that really did it for me was is this toy. I'll show him to you now. Take a look at that. It's magnificent, this toy. I mean, it made me completely overhaul my opinion on the Beast Wars line in general. Really, what I should have done is started off with the original Beast Wars Megatron. Now, I probably will do a review on him at some point. The reason I'm kind of reluctant to do it is because I hate it. I really hate it. I think it is one of the worst toys that has ever had the Transformers label attached to it. But I'll get into that when I finally get around to doing a review of it. Now, this is the last Megatron that was ever released for the Beast Wars line, Transmetal 2 Megatron. And it was after Megatron had gone through a number of evolutions in the Beast Wars series. One of the things that's really interesting about the Beast Wars line is that it established this notion of the Transformers as a protean race. They can adapt themselves and alter their physical makeup based on whatever environments they find themselves in. And so they don't really have any one established form, which is kind of interesting, and it's something that's filtered down into the latter-day comics, and even those that refer to Generation 1, if you look at the IDW comics, the Transformers in that are constantly reformatting themselves, depending on where they find themselves. And this is the ultimate form of Beast Wars Megatron. Now, Beast Wars Megatron wasn't the original Megatron. Beast Wars took place several generations after the original Great War between the Autobots and the Decepticons, and some sort of although it's never really fleshed out, it's a shame. I would love to see some sort of official background on that. There seems to have been some sort of treaty signed between the Autobots and the Decepticons, and their descendants, the Maximals and the Predacons, now coexist on Cybertron in a state of very tenuous peace. There are suggestions that it's not quite as comfortable as some would like to make out, but there is a level of general stability on Cybertron at this point. However, this guy, who adopts the name of Megatron, and it seems that he seeks to kickstart the Great War again. He wants the Predacons to rise up and take their rightful place as the Lords of Cybertron and beyond. So he's a sort of a war criminal. I think that's the best way of describing him, actually. And over a series of various events, he finally evolves into this form, the Transmetal 2 Dragon. And it's one of the most amazing Transformers toys ever produced, actually. It's definitely something that was produced with collectors in mind as opposed to as just a toy. The reason I say that is not only is it incredibly detailed and mechanically consummate, it's brilliantly designed. It's also somewhat flimsy. It's not the kind of thing that really you can throw around and expect to survive. However, that said, what faults it does have, and it does have one or two rather annoying little issues with it. The overall toy is so beautiful, it's so brilliantly designed, you really can overlook them. I mean, just look at the level of sculpted detail on this toy. It goes beyond anything you will find in Generation 1 and in most of the toy lines that come after it as well. There is hardly anything in the Transformers universe that even approaches the level of detail on this guy. And because he's a Transmetal too, one of the weird design aesthetics of the Transmetal 2 line was that they made them asymmetrical. They have organic components on one side and then technological components on the other. So if you look very, very closely, you will find that one side is different from the other, which is really rather cool. It's something you can see most prominently in the wings when they're open. This is one of the little gimmicks in this mode, and in both modes actually. If you flip this little switch on the back, you can make his wings flap, and you can also hook the switch in place so that they stay open. And it looks so good when the wings are open. These wings are, without a doubt, the most brilliant part of it. They look so good. They're also the flimsiest. I mean, if you are going to play with this guy, you're going to have to be really careful of them because they are very, very brittle. And to break it would be really upsetting, to be quite frank. But if you look very closely, you can see the wings are very, very different from one another in terms of their design. And the same is true on both sides. One side has a more sort of organic look, whereas the other side is more technological. Also, in keeping with the Transmetal 2s, it has an exposed spark crystal, which is this thing here, which displays the Predacon symbol. Loads of gimmicks in this mode, absolutely loads. It's got the flapping wings. There's a sort of lever thing on the back, and you can use it to make the neck go up and down and to make it swing from side to side. Also, his jaw will open. And you can fix a little missile in there as well, and when you open it, it will fire the missile, which obviously I never ever do, because firing missiles are tits. In terms of posability in this mode, like all the Beast Wars toys, this thing, you can move it in any way you see fit. And in fact, because of the neck and the tail being just made of very, very flexible rubber, this is probably... It's arguably the most posable Beast Wars toy and one of the most posable Transformers in existence, which is very, very nice indeed. Let's give you a little close-up there on the head. Hang on, let me adjust this slightly. There we are. Just look at the level of detail on that head. It is stunning. Actually, I've altered mine slightly because when you buy him, he's a very, very uniform red. He's varying degrees of red, but there is one, this plastic red here is far more prominent than the rest. So I've actually altered mine with some gold details, just to pick out some of the more impressive parts of the mould. But there we are, Transmetal 2 Megatron in his Dragon mode. The best Dragon former ever made, I think. There are one or two Dragon formers these days. There were never any in Generation 1, or rather there were never any that were any good. The only Dragon former I can think of in Generation 1, off the top of my head, is Double Cross, who was the double-headed monster bot, and he was shit. Absolute shit. He was one of those really horribly gimmicky toys from the latter days of Generation 1, whose gimmicks never worked. He had a little wheel in his chest and you could roll it and there'd be a flint inside and it would make sparks come out of his mouth. It was a gimmick that wore down after a couple of days of playing with him. What a pile of shite that is. This guy, much as I love Generation 1, and I do, this guy overshadows pretty much any Dragon former you will find in it. As for the niggling issues I mentioned earlier, his general fragility is a sort of a problem, I suppose. He is very fragile, and if you throw him about too much, he will break to pieces. He also has a wee bit of visible head syndrome. That is the robot head for Megatron, and you can definitely see it. It's very, very clear there. But barring that, I really cannot fault this toy. It's such an ambitious piece of work, for one thing, and that's always laudable. Sometimes they fail when there's too much ambition thrown at them. Sometimes they get too gimmicky, or the sculpt is just too ambitious for the mechanical capabilities of the designers. But this one, by and large, succeeds beautifully.